Doubles and coffee. Well, if y'all did not read or hear about the judgment against the PNM government in the Niquan case, where Niquan blew up and a man died because of an industrial accident and so on, where the judge said that the PNM had no reason to keep information from the widow, from the family, from the public, because it was a matter of public interest. If you all don't know what is Niquan, Niquan is World GTL. Niquan is Malcolm Jones. Niquan is billions of dollars of your money wasted by the PNM. Niquan is Stuart Smallpin Young as the attorney for Malcolm Jones. Niquan is PNM, Rowley and Alrawi and Stuart Smallpin Young taking Malcolm Jones out of court. That Niquan is where the Privy Council said, but what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago that a case that a Minister of Communications could say beforehand that Nelson, Queen's Counsel back then, now King's Counsel, Nelson Gate intricately linked, that Nelson gave a detailed opinion that the case was strong, and then just so, when the PNM won, they tried to hide that too. He gave a one paragraph saying, hey, this case ain't good. Take Malcolm Jones out of court. The PNM announced to the world that the case might be weak, and then they took it out. The law lords in the Privy Council could not believe that something so corrupt, something so nepotistic, something so conflicted could occur in a democratic country in this day and age. Well, a judge ruled that the PNM was corrupt, that the PNM had no reason for withholding that information. Let me read for you a little bit. Niquan, World GTL, and then I'll remind all you really and truly what it was, right? Justice Quinlan Williams stated that based on the evidence presented by both sides during hearing of the judicial review claim, she found there was significant public interest in having the information released. Disclosure of the report will illuminate the ministry's investigative process and its findings on the operations of Niquan that led to the circumstances surrounding her husband's death, stated the judge. She went on to add, there is public interest in disclosure as the report would indicate how the ministry as regulator in the energy sector under the Petroleum Act carries out its functions of enforcement and safety. This is the same PNM that allowed 4 men to die in a pipe. This is the same PNM who did not want to disclose how your money, your revenues were earned or whether it existed in the Auditor General report. This is the PNM who trying to talk about Kamla Prasad Bisesa standing up with the USA, European Union, OAS, Canada, against a dictator who stole an election in Venezuela. This is the same PNM, you know. The judge continued, the refusal by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to disclose its investigative report on an explosion at Niquan Energy's Point-A-Bear plant in 2023, which resulted in the death of an employee of a third-party contractor, is unlawful. The PNM is unlawful. Stuart Smallpin Young is unlawful. Rowley and his whole band, including Penny, is unlawful. The High Court ruled. It appears to this court that the defendant's unwillingness to disclose the report arose through secrecy. Yes, remember Rowley and his secrecy? Well, the judge said PNM, the motivation was out of secrecy and reasons of self-preservation. Self-preservation. Do you read what a judge said? So the PNM took a decision to hide information, to preserve their power position, to preserve themselves, to keep a secret from the people so that the people could be hoodwinked into believing the PNM was working for them when the PNM was working for themselves, their friends, and their financiers. The judge continued, especially in regard to the fact that the claimant is desirous of pursuing litigation. The widow lost her husband. She wants information on how her husband died, and the PNM kept it secret. And Smallpin trying to defend this up to now. Smallpin, not even a curtail of epic proportion would return Smallpin to any sense of normalcy, conscience, propriety, and righteousness. Justice Quinlan Williams also said the ministry's officials had a duty to seek the views of individuals and entities in the report before completing it. The ministry cannot use a breach of their duty as an excuse to keep the report secret under the guise of public interest. But that was the PNM. Everything was secret. COVID, secret. Funding, secret. Auditor General, secret. Decision, Delcy Rodriguez, PDVSA, secret. Maduro, secret. Barrier divers, secret. The PNM, secret. All you see it from a judge now. In determining the case, Justice Quinlan Williams criticized the ministry for responding outside of the 30-day deadline. You see, the law, PNM don't care about the law. When you make a freedom of information request, you have 30 days to respond. One of the reasons provided by Stuart Smallpin Young, the PNM and the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries was provided by the ministry for failing to respond in a timely manner was the Christmas season. Santa Claus was coming. Rudolph the reindeer was on his way with his dancer and prancer. That's what PNM talking about in a court of law when somebody died in an accident that occurred due to PNM malfeasance and corruption and nepotism since 2007, you know. But the judge said the Christmas season was not a valid excuse. The court found that the reliance on the Christmas holidays without more was a poor reason for breaching the duty to inform the claimant as soon as practicable. That is an indictment and a judgment on the PNM. Not only you, the people, gave them a judgment on April 28th, but the judges are ruling against them one by one because they were dishonest, oppressive, dictatorial, secretive, malicious, vindictive, and self-preservation was their goal. They were never about you, they were about recusals. That World GTL turned into Niquan thing. That began with Malcolm Jones as executive chairman of Petrotrin, the PNM. They were trying to make this plant to turn diesel, to create diesel. And Malcolm Jones single-handedly of the PNM took more and more millions into billions of your dollars and invested in this plant because the people who came was a fly-by-night company, just like when Rowley and them wanted to bring 2 electricians to buy your refinery. Fly-by-night companies. Rowley and Smallpin and the PNM, anything to do business, always have a company with a track record of corruption, Trafigura, PTE, OANA, all over the place. Companies that have questions to answer. Then they put out your money, billions of dollars. The plant then collapsed and failed. The new government under Kamala Persad came in 2010 to 2015. We investigated this. The Attorney General put Malcolm Jones in court to try and recover some of your money. There was a PS called Alison Due Diligence Lewis, who was the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, supposed to be apolitical, impartial, and guiding. She advised the cabinet that project was dead, that no further investment could ever bring anything out of that. So the cabinet decided to leave it, to let it go, and to just try to do what's best, maybe eventually sell the assets and so on as scrap, because the advice, especially from Alison Due Diligence Lewis, who later became a PNM chairman of the port, who allowed Rowley and Smallpin to buy ferries, who then went on the board of Niquan, the same Niquan you're talking about now. She jumped on the board with a former independent senator and then went on that. They got money. The PNM came into the election on email gate with Keith Rowley lying in the parliament and Stuart Smallpin Young defended them in email gate. That's where they met. That's where your selected PNM Prime Minister of a day came from, defending Rowley in email gate. Rowley came in, and their very first action, Faris Al-Rawi was Attorney General. Stuart Smallpin Young was a minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General. They pulled out the case against Malcolm Jones. Stuart Young failed to tell you all back then he did not disclose that he was Malcolm Jones' attorney beforehand. Malcolm Jones came out of court. Rowley put him on the Energy Advisory Committee. The law lords could not believe. And you know whose advice they move on to withdraw a case for £100 million, $1 billion? The Queen's Counsel Nelson of Nelson Gate fame later on, where you saw that Nelson had done an indemnity with Faris Al-Rawi to go after 2 former UNC ministers and senators. The same Nelson, he tell them in a short paragraph, nah man, that case ain't good. But the Minister of Communication back then, Coffee, was done saying the case week before the advice. So like them had a crystal ball and them knew that the man was going to write an advice to say that the case suddenly after 7 years get weak. That is the PNM. That is Niquan. Then Franklin Can and the PNM gave your assets, your $1 billion of assets to Niquan, to the boy, the PNM financier, the man who get land and thing all over the place. You know what they gave them it for? 10 million US and $25 million US in preference shares, which is actually worth $0. So they gave away billions of dollars of assets for 10 million US. The PNM didn't stop there. Franklin Can, there's something called ministerial gas, which means the Minister of Energy representing the people of Trinidad and Tobago could give a project some gas to operate. The PNM gave Niquan that gas. They then tried to start up the plant. The plant blew up nearly 3 times. It didn't produce anything. Alison due diligence Lewis, who's on the PNM board of the port and on Niquan, was then also put on Republic Bank board. Republic Bank, you know, since the Clico fiasco, the government owns a certain amount of shares. Well, Republic Bank, who all you can't get no loan from. To go and get a loan, you had to bring your deed. You had to have collateral. You have to go through up and down, through circle, up in a carousel, come back down, and you still ain't gonna get through. Republic Bank, with Alison P.S. due diligence Lewis, gave Niquan, who was unable to produce anything, $120 million US loan. That loan is now bad debt on the books of Republic Bank. They could never recover that. Niquan went in to try to get into operation. They incurred over $530 million US in debt. They could not pay their workers. The plant nearly blew up twice. A man eventually died. And Small Pin, PNM Young and Rowley tried to hide that from the widow, from the people, from the media, from the country. That is PNM. So when you all hear a judge reading and saying that the PNM was unlawful, the PNM was corrupt, the PNM was lying, the PNM was making false excuses, the PNM was secretive, the PNM was malicious and vindictive, that is the PNM. So they are where they deserve to be, and they must remain there for an inordinate amount of time. Fire, burn the PNM.